Before paper existed, writing was difficult. In the early days of human history, people used whatever they could find: stone walls, bones, tree bark. Ancient Egyptians wrote on papyrus scrolls, while others used animal skins stretched and dried into parchment. Imagine that for a moment. A scholar sitting by the dim light of a lamp, slowly scratching letters onto a heavy surface. It was slow, costly, and hard to store. Books were rare. Knowledge was limited to only a few, those who could afford these expensive materials. But that was about to change. We travel now to ancient China. The year is around 105 CE. The Han Dynasty rules the land. It's a time of discovery, culture, and quiet invention. At the royal court, there lived a man named Kai Lun, a thoughtful official. He wasn't a soldier or a king. He didn't lead armies or rule lands. He was a thinker, and he had a simple question. Can we make writing easier? He had seen bamboo slips that were heavy, and silk scrolls that were beautiful, but far too expensive. He wanted something new, something light, cheap, and easy to write on. Kai Lun began to experiment. He gathered old cloth, tree bark, even scraps from fishing nets. He chopped and soaked them in water, then pounded the mixture into a soft, pulpy liquid. This pulp was poured onto a flat screen and left to dry under the sun. As the water disappeared, a thin, flat sheet appeared, light, smooth, ready for ink. This was paper. Simple, beautiful, and powerful. Kai Lun presented his invention to the emperor. It was accepted, and soon more people began to write. Knowledge began to spread, from the hearts of China to the hands of travelers, merchants, and scholars. Centuries later, paper reached the Muslim world, where scholars embraced it eagerly. From Baghdad to Cairo, libraries grew, books multiplied, wisdom was shared. Eventually, paper crossed into Europe, changing education, communication, and the world itself. Today, we don't think much of paper. We fold it, we toss it, we scribble on it without a second thought. But in every quiet page, in every soft notebook, there's a piece of Kai Lun's gift to the world. And as you drift to sleep tonight, know that the words written long ago, on sheets made by hand and heart, still live on. Now let's move on to our next story. The story of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Long ago, on the edge of a quiet sea, there was a city that shimmered with marble and sunlight. Its name was Alexandria. Built by the great conqueror Alexander the Great, it stood at the crossroads of the ancient world. Sailors arrived from Greece, from Egypt, from distant islands, their sails billowing in the wind. The city was alive, but not loud. Its streets were lined with white buildings, shaded by tall palm trees. There were scholars sitting outside the grand library of Alexandria, quietly reading scrolls in the morning light. In the marketplaces, voices murmured gently. Spices glowed in bowls of copper, and fishermen mended nets in slow, patient rhythms. Along the coastline, the sea stretched endlessly. Waves curled in soft loops, brushing against the sandy shore. Seagulls floated through the sky, gliding slowly above the harbor. Alexandria was a place of learning, of trade, of peace. But the sea was not always kind. At night, the beauty of the harbor became a silent danger. The coastline of Alexandria was rocky, sharp, hidden beneath the dark waves. Many sailors, returning under the stars, struggled to find the shore. There were no lights to guide them, only moonlight and hope. More than once, A ship would be sailing home, its crew tired, its sails torn by storms, and then a terrible crash. The sound of wood breaking, cries in the night, lives lost, so close to land. The people of Alexandria began to worry. The sea had brought them trade and knowledge, but now it was taking too. They needed something to help the sailors, to protect them. They needed a light. It was then that King Ptolemy, ruler of Egypt after Alexander, made a quiet decision. He would build a tower. Not just any tower, but a guiding light, something the world had never seen before. He called for his architect, Sostratus of Cnidus, a man known not for war or wealth, but for wisdom and vision. Sostratus listened carefully. He walked the shore, he watched the ships, he studied the sun, the stars, the winds, and slowly he designed a dream. A tower that would rise from the island of Pharos just off the coast, built with smooth white stone, tall and elegant. Its walls would gleam under the sun. At night, a great fire would burn at the top. And so the building began. From the first stone to the final flame, it took many, many years. Boats carried large blocks of limestone across the water to the island of Pharos. Men lifted them slowly, shaping each one by hand. The air was filled with soft chipping sounds and the calls of seagulls circling above. Sostratus designed the tower in 3 gentle layers. The bottom was wide and square, a steady base like a mountain. The middle rose in an octagon, balanced, graceful, and at the very top, a tall, round section where the fire would burn. Above that, some say, stood a statue, perhaps of Zeus or Poseidon, watching over the sea. As the tower climbed higher, it touched the sky, and when it was done, it was unlike anything the world had ever seen. By day, the tower shimmered in the sunlight, its pale stone glowing against the endless blue sky. Sailors could see it from over 30 miles away, a miracle in the mist. At night, flames were lit at the top. Great mirrors caught the fire's light and cast it across the sea like a beam. For the first time, ships could find their way home in darkness. No more crashing on the rocks, no more fear in the final miles. They simply looked for the light and followed it safely to Alexandria. The lighthouse became known as the Pharos of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It stood tall, proud, peaceful, and for centuries it watched over the sea. The Pharos stood for more than 1,000 years, but time has a gentle way of changing everything. Earthquakes came. Stone by stone, the lighthouse weakened, until one day it was gone, but not forgotten. Even now, we call tall guiding towers lighthouses, in memory of Pharos, and in the calm flicker of every harbor light, in the distant beam that guides a sailor home, a small piece of Alexandria's light still shines. So as you close your eyes and drift into stillness, imagine that tower, tall and quiet, its flame glowing softly over the sea, a light to lead you home. And now we'll talk about the journey of the first clock. Long, long ago, before alarm clocks, calendars, or minutes ticking by, the world moved at its own pace. There were no hours, no exact seconds, just the quiet rhythm of nature. People rose with the sun and slept when the stars filled the sky. They didn't rush from task to task. There were no schedules to follow, only seasons, sounds, and shadows. Imagine a village, quiet and warm. The air smells of bread baking and firewood crackling. Children play in the fields until the light fades. Farmers return from the land, not because a clock told them to, but because the sun had dipped behind the trees. It was a simpler world, and yet people began to wonder, what if we could measure time more exactly? What if we could know how long something takes? A question was slowly forming. As villages grew into towns and people traveled farther, they needed more than sunrise and sunset. A farmer wanted to water his crops, but didn't know if it had been 1 hour or 2. A trader needed to meet someone at midday, but what did midday really mean? Sometimes they'd agree to meet when the sun is above the tree, but what if clouds came? What if the tree was cut down? It wasn't just inconvenient, it was frustrating. And for those who studied the stars, or tended to large cities, or prayed at set intervals through the day, time began to matter. But how do you capture something invisible? How do you measure a moment? And so, in the quiet minds of ancient inventors, an idea began to drip, drop into being. The sundial was one of the first. A stick placed upright in the ground, casting a shadow as the sun moved. The shadow stretched, shrank, and shifted, like nature's silent pointer. Lines were drawn in the dust to mark the movement. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. In Babylon and ancient Egypt, another idea took shape. The water clock. A bowl filled slowly with water, or emptied drop by drop. The sound, soft, rhythmic, steady. Each mark on the inside of the bowl showed time passing, not by minutes, but by motion, by patience. Some clocks even had little floating figures, or gears moved gently by the weight of water. Time was still quiet, but it was becoming visible, felt, measured, one drop at a time. Time flowed gently for many centuries, but some wanted more than shadows and water. In quiet monasteries across 14th century Europe, monks gathered for prayer. Not once, but many times a day. They needed to know when to ring the bells, when the sun wasn't shining, and when water clocks fell short. And so came gears. Metal wheels, carefully shaped with tiny teeth, they turned slowly, patiently, powered by falling weights and ropes. Tock, tock, tock. The first mechanical clocks were born, ticking in stone towers, hidden from the world, but bringing a rhythm to every hour. It wasn't about speed, it was about order, about peace. Each turn of the gear, each tick was a quiet promise. This moment matters, and now it has a name. Then came a moment that would change how cities lived. In a small European town, people came together to build something tall, a tower, with a giant clock. No longer hidden in monasteries, this clock had hands and a bell, a loud, echoing sound that rang through streets and alleys, once at 1 o'clock, twice at 2, 3 chimes, at 3, and so on. People began to meet at the 3rd bell or, before the 5th. Shops opened and closed with the sound. Time became something shared, not just felt by the sun or the stars, but heard, trusted, expected. The clock wasn't just a machine, it became part of daily life, like a heartbeat for the town. Today we carry clocks in our pockets, on our wrists, on glowing screens beside our beds. But still, the ticking remains. The sound of time passing, from sundials in sand to gears in towers, to digital pulses in the air. We've always been trying to hold time, to see it, to feel it, to make it ours. But even now, time is not something to rush. It's something to breathe in slowly. Every moment is a gift. You don't need to chase it, just rest in it. Let it tick gently as you drift away. Our next bedtime story is about the Silk Road, a journey through threads in time. It begins with a thread. In a quiet garden, somewhere in ancient China, the breeze moves gently through the leaves, You can hear the soft rustle of trees and the peaceful hum of water flowing nearby. A woman sits on a low stool beside a wooden loom. Her fingers move slowly, carefully, pulling threads that shimmer in the sunlight. Silk, smooth, shining, soft as mist. It was unlike anything the world had ever seen. This silk came from a secret. Tiny caterpillars fed mulberry leaves in silence, spun cocoons of glowing thread. And the people of China learned how to gently unwind those threads and turn them into something almost magical. The fabric was light as air, yet stronger than it seemed. When worn, it fluttered like a whisper. When touched, it cooled the hand. It was beautiful, and it was protected. For many generations, the secret of silk remained hidden. Only the people of China knew how it was made, and to others, it was a mystery carried on the wind. But beauty cannot stay still forever. Soon, traders came to China, bringing horses, gold, spices, hoping for just a few rolls of silk. And slowly, carefully, the Silk Road was born. It wasn't a single road. It was many paths, winding like rivers across the land, through deserts of golden sand, over mountains where snow never melted, and across endless plains where only the stars showed the way. Imagine a caravan at dawn. Camels rise with gentle groans, their hooves pressing softly into the dust. Traders pack bags of silk, tea, and paper, tying them tightly to saddles. A boy stirs the morning fire, smoke curling quietly into the sky. Then the journey begins. They walk through wind. They pass frozen cliffs. They drink from rare wells, and at night they rest beneath a sky filled with stars, whispering stories in many languages. They carry no clocks, only the rhythm of footsteps and the promise of cities far ahead. After many weeks, the desert thins, the path opens, and there, like a dream appearing through dust, is a city of color. Maybe it's Samarkand, or Kashgar, or Baghdad. Each city is a soft maze of sandstone streets, quiet mosques, and shaded courtyards. You can hear the sound of copper bowls clinking, the gentle call of a distant flute, and the low hum of conversation in many tongues. Traders from the east bring silk, tea, and jade. Traders from the west offer wool, glass, and silver. But more than goods, they trade ideas. A poet from Persia recites a verse. A monk from India shares a thought. A doctor describes a new herb for healing. And quietly, gently, the world grows closer. These cities were not just markets. They were places of meeting, of wonder, of peaceful exchange. And though their walls may now be silent, their stories are still being told. The journey did not end in the cities of the East. The caravans moved onward, through Persia, with its tiled palaces and rose gardens, through Damascus, where markets bloomed like woven rugs, and finally, to the great seaports of the Mediterranean. From there, silk was carried by ship, across calm waters and quiet harbors. It reached Venice, and then Rome, into castles, palaces, and marketplaces that had never felt such softness before. People in the West were astonished. This fabric, light as a cloud, strong as a vine, felt like nothing they had ever touched. Kings wore it, queens treasured it, artists painted it. But silk was more than just a fabric now. It was a thread connecting distant lands. Along with it came paper, porcelain, ink, and ideas. A recipe would travel thousands of miles, a belief, a story, a star chart. Each item passed gently from one hand to the next, changing and connecting. The Silk Road was not fast. It took months, sometimes years, But that was its beauty. It taught the world that slowness could carry wisdom, that patience could bridge continents, that softness could endure. Time passed. New ships were built. New roads were paved. The great caravans slowly faded, and the Silk Road grew quiet, but its spirit remained. Today, planes fly across oceans in hours, messages travel in seconds, and yet, the feeling of connection, of faraway voices meeting in peace, still lives on. It lives in the books we read, the languages we borrow, the foods we share, and in every piece of fabric that once traveled those long and dusty roads. You may never walk through Samarkand or hear the bells of a caravan at dawn, but part of you carries their memory. Even the softest thread can cross the world. Even the quietest path can change everything. Next, we'll talk about the Library of Alexandria, a light lost in time. Close your eyes and let your mind travel to the edge of the Mediterranean Sea. There, long ago, stood a city of white stone and whispering wind. Its name was Alexandria. Built by the great conqueror Alexander the Great, it was more than a city. It was a meeting place of oceans and knowledge, of east and west, of dreams and discovery. Ships from distant lands would sail into its harbors, bringing cinnamon from India, scrolls from Greece, perfumes from Arabia. Their sails flapped gently in the sea breeze, and as they arrived, the city seemed to welcome them, quietly, calmly. Alexandria's streets were wide and marble paved. Children ran barefoot between palm trees, fishermen sang softly while mending nets. And somewhere, above the gentle clatter of hoofs and footsteps, stood something remarkable. A building made not of stone alone, but of thought. A place where silence lived and curiosity had a home. It was the beginning of something rare, a library like none the world had ever seen. It began with a dream. Ptolemy I, ruler of Egypt and a former general of Alexander, believed that the greatest treasure was not gold or land, but knowledge. He imagined a place where every scroll, every story, every idea could be gathered in one peaceful space, a home for the wisdom of all peoples. So he built a library, not to show power, but to preserve wonder. He invited scholars from Greece, Egypt, Babylon, and beyond. He gave them a home, food, and quiet places to study, and he asked them only one thing: bring knowledge, let it live. The library grew. In cool, quiet halls, shelves held thousands of scrolls, rolled tightly, marked with ink, placed with care. Each one written by hand, each one filled with the thoughts of someone who had lived and wondered before. Candles flickered along stone walls, scribes dipped pens in black ink, students whispered questions, and slowly a new kind of silence filled the air. A silence of deep thinking, of learning, of peace. No one knew exactly how many scrolls the Library of Alexandria held. Some say 400,000, others say more. But what matters is not the number, it's the care. Every ship that arrived in Alexandria's harbor was gently searched. If a scroll was found, it was brought to the library, copied by hand. The original returned. The copy added to the collection. Over time, the scrolls came from everywhere. From China, ideas on healing herbs and calligraphy. From India, texts on mathematics, stars, and zero. From Greece, philosophy, science, and art. From Egypt, wisdom passed down through the pyramids and Nile. The library was not just Greek or Egyptian. It was human, a soft weaving of thoughts across borders. It held stories of the stars, maps of lands no one had seen, poems about love written centuries before, questions about the soul, the sky, and the seas, and all of it was kept safe in quiet halls beneath an open sky. The sun rises gently over Alexandria. Its golden light spills across tiled roofs and slips silently through arched windows. Inside the library, the day begins without rush. There are no clocks, only quiet footsteps, the soft creak of wooden doors, and the rustle of scrolls being unrolled. A young scribe enters, carrying a stack of parchment. He walks past walls of cedar shelves lined with scrolls tied in colored ribbon. He sits near a low table where sunlight pools like water, and slowly he begins his work. Dip the pen, write with care, one word at a time. Nearby, a scholar reads from a scroll written in Sanskrit. Another copies a verse of Homer into Egyptian script. A small group sits cross-legged in the corner, listening to a teacher explain the shape of the stars. No one hurries. No one raises their voice. The silence here is not empty. It's filled with thought. Outside, the city hums gently. But inside, this place remains still. A world built not of stone or sword, but of ink and patience. No one truly knows how the Library of Alexandria was lost. Some say it burned, in war, in conquest, in chaos. Others say it faded slowly, books decaying from time, scrolls scattered, rooms repurposed. There was no great moment, no final goodbye, just absence, like a candle going out in a large room. You notice only when the shadows grow longer and the warmth is missing. But what was truly lost wasn't just paper. It was conversations between civilizations. It was forgotten medicines, unfinished thoughts. Next we'll talk on history of celestial navigation. Long before compasses, long before maps were printed, there was only the sky. Imagine a world without signs, without street names, without directions carved in stone. A quiet world, where travelers walked across deserts or sailed across open oceans, guided by nothing but memory and light. At night they would stop, look up, and wait, because above them the sky stretched wide and calm, a blanket of stars, glowing, steady, ancient. It was there every night, always moving, but always familiar. They noticed that some stars returned again and again, that certain shapes appeared in the same place each season. And slowly they learned not just to admire the stars, but to follow them. In the quiet northern sky, there is one star that does not move. It is called Polaris, the North Star. To early travelers, it became the most trusted companion. While the other stars spun slowly through the night, Polaris stayed in place, always in the north, always watching. If you could find the North Star, you could find direction. You could find your way home. And the rest of the stars, they moved with a quiet rhythm, like the hands of a great sky clock. At different hours, different constellations would rise and fall. Some came with winter, some belonged to summer. By watching the heavens, people could tell time. They could measure distance. They could journey not in fear but with quiet confidence, because the stars were constant. Even when the earth below changed, the sky above remained. In the open deserts of Arabia, caravans of camels moved slowly under starlight. There were no roads, only sand. But the Bedouin knew the constellations by heart. They named them like friends. They followed them like signs. Stars rose in the east and set in the west, and with each clear night, they moved one step closer to their destination. Far across the Pacific Ocean, the Polynesian wayfinders built boats without nails. They had no compasses, no sails shaped like modern ships, and yet they crossed thousands of miles of open sea. They watched the stars, they felt the currents, they memorized the paths of light across the water, and in silence they reached islands most had never seen. In the cold north, the Vikings sailed across gray waves using the stars, the sun's shadows, and the color of the sky. They reached Iceland, then Greenland, and perhaps even the shores of North America, led not by maps but by instinct and sky. Each of these travelers, different in language, in land, in time, all shared the same soft companions above, stars that moved, stars that stayed, stars that guided. As time passed, people wanted to measure the stars more closely, to not just follow them, but understand them. And so they created tools. The astrolabe was one of the first, a delicate circle of brass, carved with numbers and lines, a rotating arm, and quiet beauty. By holding it up to the sky, a traveler could measure the height of a star above the horizon, and from that learn their position, whether on sea or land. Later came the sextant, sharp, curved, precise. It caught the angle between a star and the horizon. A flash of calculation, and suddenly the sailor knew where they were in the wide world. These weren't just tools, they were expressions of wonder, each one crafted with care, decorated, balanced, treasured. They made the sky measurable, not to tame it, but to travel with it more wisely. Centuries passed. Ships gave way to planes, sextants gave way to satellites. And now, in every phone, every car, there is a tiny voice that tells you where you are. But even that voice listens to the sky. GPS satellites orbit the Earth, silent, constant, high above the clouds. They speak to devices on the ground. They send signals, measure time, and draw invisible maps across the sky. The stars are now machines, but the principle remains the same. We still look up to know where we are. We still trust what is above to understand what is below. And even now, when planes cross oceans in hours and rockets reach the moon, the ancient truth stays gentle and still. The sky guides us. Tonight, you may not be sailing a ship or walking a caravan trail, but still, when you're unsure, you look up. At dusk, you watch the first star appear. You find comfort in the slow turning of constellations. You remember that somewhere, someone else is looking up too. The stars don't rush. They don't shout. They don't judge. They just shine. Quietly, faithfully, above us all. And so, as your eyes begin to close, imagine a sky without end, a canvas of light and memory. Let it remind you that no matter where you are in the world, you are never too far from home, because the stars are still watching.